Earth's gravity is 2.5 times stronger than the galactic standard. That crucial fact was overlooked when Prince Exod challenged the human to a duel to the death over an exchange of insults. The incident had begun when Exod's crew carelessly landed their ship on top of the human's dog, crushing the small creature into pulp. Now, the prince was preparing his exoskeleton, while the human waited, carrying nothing but a long metal sword. Glazier pressed himself against a shipping container, his diminutive green form barely reaching the height of a human's knee. His large black eyes, each taking up nearly a third of his bulbous head, reflected the chaotic scene unfolding in the impromptu arena. Word had spread through the merchant district like plasma fire, and now beings from a dozen different worlds crowded around the makeshift fighting ring. Crates of various sizes had been hastily arranged in a rough circle, their mismatched colors and alien scripts creating a patchwork barrier. Some merchants had dragged out their awnings and cargo netting, stringing them between poles to create elevated viewing platforms. The air thrummed with excitement, and the electronic buzz of translation devices working overtime to convert the multilingual roar into comprehensible cheers.
Breathe, Exod! Breathe, Exod!
The chant rose from the Aluzar contingent, their deep voices resonating through the thin atmosphere of the trading station. Glazier watched as the prince's attendants swarmed around their monarch, their movements rehearsed and quick. Those Aluzars were magnificent specimens of their species, bipedal giants standing above 3 meters tall, their muscular bodies gleaming white like polished marble. Blue veins pulsed visibly beneath their translucent skin, creating intricate patterns that shifted with each movement. Their world, Glazier knew, was a moon with only 90% of galactic standard gravity, which explained their impressive height and the delicate, almost ethereal quality of their movements in the station's standard gravity field. The attendants worked with reverent care, attaching piece after piece of the molecular exoskeleton to their prince's already imposing frame. Each segment clicked into place with a satisfying vibration of activated power cells. The chest piece alone was a work of art, its surface etched with the royal crest of the Aluzar dynasty. The leg components were particularly impressive, with pneumatic assists at every joint and shock absorbers built into the feet.
Look at the human,
one of the Aluzars sneered, his voice carrying clearly across the arena.
No armor, no shields, no dignity.
Glazier's attention shifted to the other combatant, and he felt a wave of pity wash over him. The human stood alone at the opposite end of the makeshift arena, a figure that seemed almost pathetic in comparison to the technological marvel being assembled before him. The man's clothes were little better than rags, a torn gray shirt that might have once been white, pants held together with improvised patches, and boots so worn that Glazier could see toes peeking through gaps in the material. But it was this sword that drew the most mockery. The weapon was absurd. It stretched nearly 2 meters in length, its blade wider than the human's own torso. The metal was dull and pitted, showing signs of poor maintenance or perhaps simply age. The human gripped it with both hands, the muscles in his arms straining visibly just to hold it upright. How he expected to swing such a monstrosity in combat was beyond Glazier's comprehension.
Perhaps he plans to use it as a walking stick when the prince breaks his legs,
another Aluzar called out, causing a ripple of harsh laughter through their ranks.
Or maybe he'll surrender and offer it as scrap metal to pay for his funeral, added another.
The human's expression remained remarkably calm throughout the verbal assault. When the laughter died down enough for him to be heard, he spoke in a voice that was surprisingly steady.
You know,
he said, shifting his grip on the massive sword, no human would be able to use this sword on Earth, not with Earth's gravity being what it is. A rueful smile crossed his weathered face. Hell, I'm so poor I couldn't even afford to keep it sharp. The thing's as dull as a shipping manifest. This admission sent the Alusars into fresh peals of laughter. They clutched their sides, some doubling over with mirth. Even beings from other species joined in, though Glacier noticed that a few of the more experienced traders remained silent, their expressions thoughtful. The Alusar attendants took advantage of the moment to attach the final pieces of the prince's exoskeleton, a helmet with a full heads-up display and targeting system, and gauntlets that crackled with deadly energy fields. Prince Exod stood complete, a fusion of Alusar nobility and cutting-edge combat technology. The exoskeleton added another meter to his already impressive height, and every surface gleamed with active shields. He performed a few test movements, each gesture accompanied by the whisper-quiet hum of perfectly calibrated servos. "Clear the ring!" someone shouted, and the crowd pressed back against the makeshift barriers. The two combatants moved toward the center of the arena, their footsteps creating an odd counterpoint. The prince's heavy mechanical tread against the human's shuffling gait as he dragged the oversized sword behind him. When they stopped, barely 5 meters apart, the contrast was even more stark. Prince Exod towered over the human like a monument to technological superiority. "This is your fault, human," the prince declared, his voice amplified by the exoskeleton's speakers. "You should have controlled your beast better. Did you truly expect royalty to watch for every piece of biological refuse that might be scurrying underfoot? I have the right to land my ship wherever I please on this station. Your dog was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time." The human said nothing, merely adjusted his grip on the sword's handle. Glacier noticed that despite its apparent weight, the man's breathing remained steady. "No words, no pleas for mercy." Prince Exod raised one powered fist, energy crackling between the fingers. "Then let us end this farce." The prince attacked with shocking speed, his exoskeleton-enhanced muscles launching him forward in a blur of motion. His fist descended like a meteor, aimed directly at the human's head. But the human wasn't there. Moving with surprising agility despite the enormous sword, he had stepped aside at the last possible moment. The prince's fist smashed into the deck plating, leaving a crater the size of a dinner plate. "Stand still, vermin!" Exod snarled, whirling to face his opponent. The next few minutes were a study in frustration. The prince attacked with increasing fury, each blow capable of shattering stone, each movement enhanced by the finest military technology the Alusar Empire could produce. Yet the human continued to evade, always by the narrowest of margins, always dragging that ridiculous sword with him. It should have been impossible. The weight alone should have made such movements exhausting, yet the human showed no signs of tiring. Glacier found himself leaning forward, his large eyes tracking every movement. There was something about the way the human moved, something that nagged at the back of his mind. It wasn't quite right. It wasn't quite... The realization struck him like a shock prod. The human wasn't struggling with the sword's weight. He was using it. Each dodge incorporated the weapon's momentum, letting its mass help pull him out of the way of the attacks. What looked like desperate evasion was actually a careful dance, one that took into account the difference between the station's standard gravity and what the human's body was naturally adapted to handle. Prince Exod, lost in his rage, noticed none of this. His attacks became wilder, more predictable. The crowd's cheers had faded to nervous murmurs as the expected quick execution stretched into an actual fight. Then, in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the human found his rhythm. The prince lunged forward with both fists extended, committing fully to what he clearly expected to be the killing blow. The human planted his feet, gripped the sword's handle, and swung. The blade moved in a perfect arc, its dull edge irrelevant against the sheer kinetic energy being delivered. In the station's lighter gravity, the human could move the massive weapon with a speed that would have been impossible on his homeworld. but the strength required to swing it, that came from muscles adapted to Earth's crushing gravitational pull. The sword connected with the top of Prince Exod's helmet head with a sound like a starship hull breaching. The exoskeleton's shields flared and died. The helmet crumpled, and Prince Exod of the Alozar Empire was driven straight down into the deck plating like a nail beneath a hammer, his body compacting with a series of wet crunches that made even the hardened merchants in the crowd turn away. When the dust settled, the prince lay in a crater of twisted metal and shattered deck plates, his body crushed just as thoroughly as the small dog he had so carelessly killed. The arena fell silent. The Alozars stared in shock at their fallen prince, their white faces somehow managing to pale even further. Several of them began backing away, their earlier bravado evaporating like atmosphere through a hull breach. The human stood over his fallen opponent, finally letting the sword's tip rest against the ground. The weapon had performed its purpose, not as a cutting implement, but as the most primitive and effective tool known to any gravity-bound species. A lever, wielded by someone with the strength to use it.
We will return with the royal fleet,
one of the attendants stammered, trying to salvage some dignity from the situation.
You will pay for this atrocity.
The human laughed, a sound devoid of humor. I've already won, he said, using the sword as a support to lean on. Your idiot prince accepted a duel with someone who had nothing left to lose. That, my friend, is the purest form of stupidity in any star system. As the Alozars gathered their prince's remains and fled, Glacier remained pressed against his shipping container, processing what he had witnessed. The human stood alone in the arena, surrounded by the debris of combat, still holding his impractical weapon. The crowd dispersed quickly, no doubt already spreading the tale across the station and beyond. Earth's gravity is 2.5 times stronger than the galactic standard. That crucial fact would never be overlooked again.